So good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Lewis H. Aldrich. Born in 1851, I'm an inventor and a product of North Country. A good metaphor for my life came from Albert Einstein. Life is like riding a bicycle. In order to keep your balance, you gotta keep moving. In the 79 years, there were many ups and downs, but all the way I kept pedaling. Thurman, New York is where I called home. I was born to a well-off family, well-off that is for Thurman. There were 7 of us children, 6 boys and 1 sister. All of us enjoyed very prosperous careers. Some were in politics, some were judges, and 1 was a doctor. My father, David, served in the New York legislature for 1 term. I myself dabbled in lower-level politics, serving as undersheriff, and a few other stints along the way. My family was able to send me to Union College, where I graduated as a lawyer in 1878. There were many uphills at that time, many rough roads, and it became a little wobbly along the way. But all the way, I maintained my balance and kept pedaling. My first wife, I married a young lady named Rui. We lived together in our father's house in that area for those first few years. Sadly, she passed away in 1882 at only age 36. I'll tell you, when you fall off a bicycle, you've got 1 of 2 choices. You can either quit riding or you can hop back on. At this point, there was no choice for me but to restart my life. I went to Glens Falls to practice law and served as an undersheriff until 1883. And then I resumed my law practice at 108 Glen Street in the same suite of offices where the county judge was. It was at this point in my life when things began to diverge again. I went out on a fishing trip to kind of gather my thoughts. I went out west to San Francisco and also Seattle, Washington. When I came back to Glens Falls, I had all intentions of going back out west, but I didn't do that. Instead, I bought a piece of property at Monument Square and resumed my practice of law. Also, in 1892, I inherited a piece of property at Riverside in Johnsburg when my dear father passed. Now, all those challenges in life at that time started really weighing on me as an individual. I began to have this desire to feel free. That's when I started bicycling. Bicycling became my saving grace. I became fairly talented at it, and in 1896, it led me to create an invention of a single-wheel paddle boat that gave me a lot of notoriety in the area. Now, I know I've got a photograph of it around here somewhere. Excuse me for a moment. Sarah, have you seen my photograph?
Just a moment, dear.
Oh, anyway, typical. It was a primitive design of a paddle boat like you see today. Now, my paddle boat had a large wheel on the side. It was a pontoon design. It had 2 seats in it, and you had pedals and chains, and you could propel the wheel. I also put large rocks around the boat to create a level of balance and keep us afloat. Ah, here it is.
I wouldn't take a gamble of taking it out on rough water, but I bet even you could have fun with it on a good day.
Oh my. You know, we did not get a patent for this, but we sure had a lot of fun with it. And I'll tell you, it got me a lot of attention, both politically and otherwise. In the many years that I lived alone, pedaling through life, I finally got the attention of this beautiful young woman, my late-in-life bride, Sarah Stevenson Aldrich.
It's a pleasure to meet you all. I certainly had my bumps in the road as well, but like Lewis, I just kept pedaling. I'm originally from Whitehall. Then I went off to become a nurse, living and working in Brooklyn. There, I had access to the big city. It was a diverse population. It was a different type of culture. And everything I was lacking in my youth was at my fingertips. But later on in life, my heart pulled me away from urban living. And I went on to move back to Glens Falls, where I worked, and I lived with my Aunt Emma and my Uncle Leonard Baldwin of 18 Goodwin Street. There, I became a member of the Society of Friends in Glens Falls. I also continued my nursing, was in upstate, I met Lewis, and I was immediately captivated by his creative nature. There's no doubt there weren't other women who were interested in Lewis, but I think what set me apart from the rest was my independence and my drive to keep moving forward without riding on the side of Lewis. Although we married later in life, we made the best of our time together.
You could carry on an intelligent conversation. You didn't need to be flattered or coddled. You had a mind of your own.
Well, you were certainly a challenge, my dear, but I did look forward to it. You know, after our honeymoon from the south, we moved up and we stayed in Pleasant View on Upper Bay Street.
You know, we found ourselves quite compatible. We enjoyed some lively dialogue, and we partook in some of the same activities. Sarah was greatly helpful at keeping track of our investments, and let me tell you, she could sure stir things up.
Oh, you never forgive me with the row I had with Union Bank.
Not at all. I loved it.
We kept up the challenges of the property in the hotel at Riverside until about 1920. About that time, we decided to sell the property and start winding down from the law practice and the politics. And in 1926, we ended up retiring to our little home on 18 Goodwin Street. With conditions, as Lewis always liked to keep abreast of all of the happenings in Glens Falls.
During my retirement, I served and worked as a chauffeur. Now that provided me access to some of the most influential people in the area. And I'll tell you, it gave me access to some of the best gossip and news of the day that I could bring home and hash over with dear Sarah. Now, we didn't have any children, but we stayed real close to my one surviving brother and his nieces. Now, I passed away in 1930, and Sarah lived another 8 years.
I have no complaints. Lewis gave me 30 good years of great conversation and everyday pleasures.
Now, we didn't hit the good times, mind you, but we sure enjoyed our life. We enjoyed a lot of things together and had many great days in our lives. If it wasn't for that crazy picture of that paddle boat, we may have been forgotten all these years. And we thank you so much for enjoying our story.
Thank you.